everyone, this is a video to show my latest completed corset. Now, I'm recording this in June, however, it's not going to be aired until September because I've promised to keep this a secret until after the convention. But anyways, the client who had commissioned this was going to a convention in August, and she wanted to go as the TARDIS. So this is actually the top of the TARDIS. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking it's a little bit puckery, it's a little bit wrinkled. There's a reason for that, and I'm going to show you this, the reason for this a little bit later. So here is the corset when it's off, and I'll explain what I mean in a little bit. So the side, the back, other side. So you can see it goes white, blue around the entire corset. And here's what it looks like when it is on. Now, if you notice that it's flickering just a little bit, that's because I am currently lighting it with 9-volt batteries, and it's supposed to be 12-volt batteries. However, I am saving the 12-volt batteries for, to send it to the client so that it will remain fully charged. But this is just generally what it's supposed to look like. So you can see that because I had the LEDs underneath it, I couldn't fuse the fashion fabric to the core or the strength fabric like I usually do. So it's actually somewhat a floating fashion fabric, which accounts for some wrinkles. However, those are forgivable by the client, considering the fact that the corset itself lights up. So for the length and fit of this, you can see that the corset itself has very gentle curves. This only gives about a 2-inch reduction in the client because she doesn't waist train and she's only wearing this for the convention. Also, she didn't want to be too cinched in because she's going to be walking around in it all day. This is a fully made to measure corset, so I took measurements at the bust, under bust, waist, upper hips, and lower hips. Also, I took the height into account and the bust size because sometimes when you take the measurement of the bust area, you don't know how much of it is squishy and how much of it is actual rib cage, so that is sometimes important. I also took vertical measurements from the waist up to all those circumferential measurements, and actually the client sent me a duct tape form of herself in the mail so that I could check the measurements of this with the duct tape form, so that was very helpful. You can see that the center front here is 18 inches. It has a 16-inch busk in there because she is quite a tall client. And you can see that the top is basically goes straight across instead of a sweetheart line because she is a little bit younger. She wanted something a little bit more modest in there. And you can see that the bottom is also fairly straight. Has just the most gentle sweeping down in the front there. Alright, so here is the corset laying flat. Now there's a lot to go through here, so I'm going to go as quickly as possible. For the materials here, there are 2 layers of couture on the inside as the core, and then a matte satin, white satin over top with this gauzy, lightweight blue crushed material for the accents. I would have liked to interface or stabilize the fashion layer in some way so it wasn't so wrinkly like you see here, but when I tried that, even with a lightweight interfacing, I found that it diffused the LEDs more than I'd liked. So it ended up looking slightly lumpy anyways because the fabric doesn't lay flat over the LED, so it's not like I can fuse it. Also, the blue material couldn't be pressed here, otherwise the texture would have come out of it. The client wanted to keep the texture because it looks like aged wood that's been painted over. So as a result, the faux channels look kind of puffy, but that ended up kind of being a kind of happy aesthetic surprise. So for the construction of this, I started by making the couture core first, and I boned it in between the 2 layers of couture. The waist tape, I'm not sure if you can see it, but it is sandwiched between those 2 layers of couture there, so it's not visible from the inside or the outside. And then I took the LED ribbon and I laid them down in vertical strips onto the outside of the couture core underneath this fashion layer here, and I hand sewed those vertical ribbons of LEDs one by one. That took about 10 hours to do, but I wanted to make sure that it didn't slip around. And I had laid those down where I knew that the blue faux boning channels weren't going to cover it up. I then made the floating fashion layer with the faux boning channels in blue, and I attached the fashion layer to the core at the front by the busk. I also hand tacked the fashion layer to the core beneath all of these blue faux boning channels here. That took another 4 hours or so. And I then secured the fashion layer down to the core, also at the back edges, putting the blue accent there as well and making the boning channels through all the layers there. So for the binding at the top and bottom, they're not sewn through all the layers of the corset. The binding was first actually machine stitched onto the fashion layer, and then for the top binding here, it was hand sewn using an invisible stitch to the core here. And I did it this way because I didn't want to risk sewing through the wires, so I just thought it would be safer to do that, and it actually looks nicer on the inside that way as well. The binding on the bottom, however, they were also machine stitched here on the fashion layer, but then on the inside I did something a little bit different. I hand sewed snaps onto the bottom here. So there are 5 snaps on each side, and that means that for any reason, if the client or her mom needs to get to the LED ribbon, then you can open up this corset and you see a little bit of the ribbon in there. So she can get to the wires if she needs to. For a Modesty panel, there is a placket on the knob side of the busk here to prevent pinching and to keep the blue going all the way around here. So you can see that when the corset is closed, it gives a nice effect. However, on the back, there is no Modesty panel. The client requested that no back Modesty panel be made, as the corset was designed to close all the way in the back. And anyway, since this is for a convention, having a little gap in the back would be good for keeping her cool throughout the day, since her costume is quite heavy and large. And the busk here is heavy duty, 1 inch wide on each side. I bought it from England with 6 pins, quite heavy duty, quite secure. And for the bones in this corset, like I said before, the bones are sewn on the inside between the 2 layers of the coutil core, so you don't see any of the boning channels on the outside here. There are a total of 18 bones in this corset, not including the busk. There is 1 bone at each seam and another bone in the middle of each panel. So on each side, 7 of the bones, see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, those are 7mm wide spiral steel bones, so they're just a little bit more heavy duty than the usual 6mm or 5mm spirals that I usually use. And then on the back here, there is a 1/4 inch wide flat steel bone and then a 1/2 inch wide flat steel bone sandwiching the grommets. And here is a close-up of the grommets. The grommets themselves are black. It was the closest that I could get to the blue, and they are 2-part size 0 grommets. I initially wanted to paint both the busk and the grommets the same color blue, so it would look, completely seamless. But the paint, I found, just wanted to rub off, especially with the abrasion of the laces clasping and unclasping of the busk and everything. So I decided just to go with the black grommets in the back. And here's the back side of the grommets. These are working well, as they always have. They have no splits in them. For a while I was getting splits in almost all of my grommets, and I thought that maybe it was the quality of my press or something, but then I changed suppliers for my grommets, and then I noticed that these ones have almost no splits in them at all. So when you have a problem with your grommets, try and change the grommets before you completely dismiss the press, because sometimes the quality of the grommets and the composition of the metal that they're made of does make a difference. And the laces here, they're just a typical 1/2 inch wide white double-faced satin ribbon. So if the client wants to wear the corset open just a little bit, then it will still have that same blue-white pattern all the way around the corset. So how these lights are wired up, here in the bottom back you can see the leads coming out of the bottom back binding. The lights are 12 volt and they don't light up with the little 12 volt 823 batteries. However, they do light up with 4 of these 3 volt button cells stacked up. Strangely, they also light up with a standard 9 volt battery, so if anybody can explain why 12 volt lights can light up with only 9 volts, I would really love to know that. I could have built a battery into this corset, but I figured that wouldn't be safe in case the battery gets hot or something. Also, soldering the leads to the battery wasn't really an option, because these batteries, they won't power the lights for very long. They'll be changing the batteries all day, but I couldn't very well attach like a car battery to the corset, as weight was an issue, so I went with what I could. I made a little housing, you can see here, to make the batteries, and it holds 4 button cells together. It's a little box measured so that it would be snug around the batteries, with insulating electrical tape on the outside and on the inside. And also it has two little tabs of aluminum that act as the contacts to wrap around the leads. And then the whole thing goes into this little pouch that I made out of the same matching blue material. This little pouch is big enough to hold either the little housing for the button cells or a standard 9-volt battery, whichever the client decides to use. And it stays shut with this hook and eye, as you can see here. And then two additional hooks on either side here secures it to the bottom of the corset, where it will be hidden either under the bustle of the skirt made of the same blue fabric, or if she's wearing the corset over top of the skirt, it's still going to blend in. So if you imagine that the wires are all hooked up inside of the pouch there, you just place the pouch on the hook and eyes at the bottom of the corset here, and you can see that it is wide enough to accommodate about a 4-inch gap in the back if the client wants to wear her corset a little bit open. However, if she wears it closed, then it does scrunch up and accommodate that as well, and it's not going to fall off or anything. So that's all for the case study for the top of the TARDIS corset. So if you liked this video, if you found it informative, or if you're a fan of Doctor Who, then please click that like button over there and help support the channel. If you have any comments or questions, then please feel free to leave them down below, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!